Easter Sunday, we just sort of kick back. It's nice.
Yeah.
Been doing a little traveling. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. But Ken Weaver in the newsroom and Bel Kay, of course, pushing all the blinky buttons and making things work. So there we go. I want to start out today with a discussion of this case that has been much discussed. Everybody has had something to say about it, but I haven't had the opportunity. So give me just a moment to talk about this case involving Kilmar Abrego Garcia, immigration case. He's, of course, now in a jail, not a prison anymore. They moved him from a prison to a jail, apparently, inside El Salvador, but he's still in custody of the El Salvadoran authorities. And we just had Chris Van Hollen, the senator from Maryland, to go check on the man he calls the Maryland man. Yeah, he's not a Maryland man, but that's what he calls him. He has lived in Maryland at times, but that doesn't make him a resident of Maryland, doesn't make him a U.S. citizen. But here's what Van Hollen had to say upon his return to the U.S.
He told me about the trauma he had been experiencing, both in terms of the abduction and the fact that he was originally sent to CCOT, which is this notorious prison.
Yeah, we've seen the image.
He told me how much he missed his wife and his kids. He specifically mentioned his 5-year-old boy who has autism because that boy had been in the car with him when U.S. agents had stopped them and handcuffed him and then taken him away. So he described all that, and he told me that he had moved recently to a new prison facility. So those are some of the highlights.
I want you to listen to something that Gavin Newsom had to say about all the attention this case has gotten.
This is the distraction of the day, and the art of distraction. This is the debate they want. This is their 80-20 issue as they've described it.
Is he right about the politics of this? I mean, the Republicans have taken great joy in portraying you as somebody who is defending somebody who's in this country illegally, they say as a gang member, and, and they say that they're trying to just enforce the laws.
John, I don't think it's ever wrong to protect the Constitution and protect due process rights.
Hold on. That's where we got to stop for a minute. Because he seems to suggest that, this guy got sent there without his due process. Well, let's just kind of go through that for a moment. Let's talk about that. First of all, he comes to America in 2011 as a 16-year-old and begins working in construction. He's arrested by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials while seeking day labor jobs outside a Home Depot in Maryland, probably the one in Bowie, Maryland, is my guessing. ICE alleges that he's a member of the MS-13 gang based on a Prince George's County Police Department gang field interview sheet and another form, citing a confidential informant's claim that he was an active MS-13 member with the Western Clique and the rank of Chiquero. Apparently, they sort of like military, there are certain ranks within MS-13, and he had the rank of Chiquero. The documents also mention his clothing, a Chicago's Bull hat and a hoodie, as indicative of a gang affiliation. He denies, of course. Well, what would you do? You're in MS-13, aren't you? Oh, no, not at all. Oh, okay. Apparently that's all. Now, well, if you say so, all right. There was a full immigration hearing and before a different immigration judge, and the request for asylum due to a due delayed application, but applications of withholding removal status. In other words, he was told, "You're not here legally, but we're not going to deport you as yet." And then there was the incident in 21 where his wife put out a temporary protective order against him out of caution because of domestic violence in previous relationship. And that apparently, she now doesn't want to talk about it, but she did that. And I've seen the paper. December 1st, we've talked about this perhaps a little bit on the radio station. Abrego Garcia is pulled over in Putnam County, Tennessee, on I-40 between Nashville and Knoxville for speeding and failing to maintain his lane. He was swerving. He was driving a 2001 Chevrolet that he claimed is registered to his employer, which he said was a Maryland construction company. The THP officer noted that there were 8 other individuals in the vehicle with him, no visible luggage, which is very strange. Where are you transporting the people, and why don't they have any luggage? To the trooper, this raised suspicion of human trafficking. All passengers provided their ID home address as the one that Albrego Garcia had. And they gave names, but they made sure that the writing was illegible. So later, the trooper could not make out what they had written down. As for Abrego Garcia, he's driving with an expired temporary Maryland driver's license. So he's got 8 people with him who don't have, they don't have their story straight. He says that he's just transporting them from Texas to Maryland for a job. He doesn't have a valid driver's license, and he's not an American citizen. For reasons that aren't clear to me, the State Patrol reached out to the FBI on this, and the word they got back was document who was in the van, who was in the Suburban, who was in the SUV, and then let him go. I have no idea. I have talked to local police officers, not state troopers, but just law enforcement officials, several of them. I said, hey, if you were presented with these set of facts, what would you do? And every single one of them said, that guy's going to jail. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen, and it's not clear why. This got recorded in a DHS database, and then a short time later, in 2025, March 12th of 2025, he's detained by ICE at a traffic stop in an IKEA parking lot in Maryland while driving his son. ICE agents inform him that, quote, this is the quote, his immigration status had changed due to alleged MS-13 affiliation. He is transferred to detention facilities in Louisiana and Texas. So he's been before a judge several times. They were told of his alleged affiliation. The Department of Homeland Security believes that he is MS-13. The FBI apparently believes he's MS-13. Everybody seems to believe that even the judges had no problem coming to the conclusion that he had an MS-13 connection. But for reasons that are not clear, they have never deported him. Well, you get a new president and you get a new interpretation of the laws and a new policy. And while it might have been the policy of the Biden administration to let Abrego Garcia go when he was president, the new president says, no, we have a different policy now. If you're here illegally and you have a criminal background, you're going to be deported. He was deported. Now, the courts got involved too late, and he's already in El Salvador, and who knows how it's all going to be worked out. But isn't this just the way it always happens? They want to support, the Democrats on the left want to support this guy. Van Hollen goes over there to try to make him a cause célèbre. It's not working out well for them. And Tom Homan has a word or two that he'd like to share with Chris Van Hollen. I'll get to that right after we take a break now. 15 minutes past the hour of 12 o'clock.
Well, stocks are down today. We'll give you some reasons for that and other top stories coming up at 12:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
The idea of somebody being deprived of their liberty and actually in a foreign prison without due process of law, that's something we should all fight for. I think what Americans are tired of is people who want to put their finger to the wind to see what's going on. And I would say that anyone that's not prepared to defend the constitutional rights of one man when they threaten the constitutional rights of all doesn't deserve to lead.
But he's not an American citizen. Where do the constitutional rights fall if you're not an American citizen? I remember a story, a friend of mine who went down to Panama back when we were worried about the Panama and Noriega and all that, and went in and they got this Panamanian leader. It wasn't Noriega, but it was another high-ranking Panamanian leader. And they put him into the lie detector, put it in the polygraph, and hooked him up to it to ask him questions. And part of the deal was to sort of, rattle his cage. And they asked him, first question, the guy comes in and says, did they read you your rights? And he looked, and he said, no. What, they didn't read you your rights? And then he looked around and said, no. And he's like getting real confident, like, I'm going to skate here because they didn't read me my rights. And he turned, and then the guy turns to the other people in the room, hey, you didn't read him his rights? And they all said, no, we didn't read him his rights. It's because you don't have any rights. You're not an American. It's true. And when you are, in the country illegally, you are not an American citizen. As far as I'm concerned, you don't have the same rights as an American citizen. And look, Van Hollen is way off base here. Tom Homan thinks so.
As a U.S. Senator, traveled El Salvador on taxpayer dime to meet with an MS-13 gang member, public safety threat, terrorists. I mean, in the meantime, the day before he traveled, an illegal alien was arrested for murder, were released to the streets rather than honoring an ICE detainer in his very own state. What concerns me is Van Hollen never went to the border the last 4 years under Joe Biden when he had a 600% increase in sex trafficking of women and children. You have a record number of no-inspected terrorists crossing that border. You had 250,000 Americans die from fentanyl overdose because of the open border. You had over 4,000 illegal aliens died making that journey, which is an historic record. What shocks me is he's remained silent on the travesty that happened on our southern border. Many people died. Thousands of people died. I've met with hundreds of angel moms and dads who buried their children that were murdered by an illegal alien. How many angel moms and dads has he met in the state of Maryland? That's what concerns me.
You got to wonder, what are the Democrats thinking? Clearly, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the program. Clearly, the American people are on board with the idea of getting people into this country illegally back to where they came from. Give them a chance to start over if they want to do it in the right way. But, get them out of the country and do it correctly. And you got to wonder, why in the world do Democrats take this on?
I don't understand why the American left falls in love with the worst people. You've got
That's Scott Jennings.
A gang-banging, human trafficking, wife-beating illegal alien, and a United States senator in a ludicrous display of energy is in El Salvador having Mai Tais and Yahtzee. I do not get it. I do not understand why the left takes on the heroes. People like that. I don't get it.
I don't get it either. Some illegal aliens are taking things to heart and are self-deporting. This from frontpagemag.com. Self-deportation alone is not going to solve America's illegal alien problem, but it can help. And even the media is getting around to reporting it. Talking about people who have said, you know what, I'm going to leave and go back. I think I'm done here. So there's some of that going on right now as well. In related news, I thought this was interesting. In Colorado, Mexican nationals were busted in Colorado, and I'm not making it up, carrying 180,000 rounds of rifle ammo. It happened last month in Fremont County, Colorado, the most rural county southwest of Colorado Springs. 2 Fremont County detectives noted a van passing without dimming their headlights, and so they turned and initiated a traffic stop. And what they found was an eye-opener, about 180,000 rounds of 30 caliber and 7.62 millimeter rifle ammunition packed in cases in the van. 2 Mexican nationals arrested during the traffic stop, Cesar Ramon Martinez and Humberto Ivan Amador Gavira, were pulled over in Canyon City on March 26th, the U.S. Attorney's Office, District of Colorado, said in a news release. That's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting, isn't it? I think so. And this whole idea that we do not have due process and that we need to take action, and the Supreme Court action over the weekend saying everything needs to come on pause. Here's what I'm going to say about that. I think that it's going to be okay. I think the Supremes have looked at this in the past, and if their past rulings are any indication, they're going to come to the conclusion that the President of the United States is within his rights to have such a policy, and that the due process has indeed been followed. That there's nothing wrong with what the President or the Trump administration has done here. I think it will come to that. It may take a while. I don't understand why the Supreme Court decided to put down the emergency order, other than, well, we just need to slow down the process and double check and look over everybody's shoulder and check all the boxes to make sure everything is being done in accordance with the law. But I think it is being done in accordance with the law, and I think it's not going to be an issue. The Supremes have been a little disappointing lately, haven't they? Look, due process. If you're talking about this Kilmar Abrego Garcia, I see that he had 2 different immigration hearings in his past and was given basically a delayed application that grants him withholding of removal status. But that's a gift. I don't think that stands in the way of what the Trump administration has done. He's a guy who beats his wife. He's a guy who's driving with an expired driver's license, and I think the suspicion at the time, the trooper certainly felt this way, that he was involved in some kind of potential human trafficking. But the FBI under the Biden administration said, let him go, let him go. We don't, just take a note of who it is, take some pictures and let him go. I don't know of any police officer who thinks, and I've talked to several about this, who thinks that was the right decision. I've talked to police officers who say, look, at the very least, I would have arrested him and cut the others loose because he was driving with an expired driver's license. Certainly needed more than an hour's worth of investigation before the FBI told him to cut him loose. Now, and the other thing is why did the troopers, why did the Tennessee Highway Patrol go to the FBI in this case? There are plenty of laws in the state of Tennessee that would have allowed them to bring a potential human trafficking case. Seems like you detain those folks and you investigate whether or not this is a case of human trafficking because the laws of Tennessee require it. At the very least, he's driving with an expired license. The man should have gone to jail instead of just being turned loose. How many people, if you're out there and you're driving and you don't have the right paperwork, what do you think's going to happen to you? Why did this guy just, get cut loose? I don't know. We're going to find out in the days ahead. But I tell you, all of this talk about Kilmar Abrego Garcia not having due process just doesn't ring true to me at all. And it seems to me that indeed he did have plenty of opportunity, but it's just that now we have a president who's willing to enforce the law. Due process, I think he got it. I just don't understand those who say he did not. And I ultimately believe that the Supreme Court, when it catches its breath and gets all of the filings in, is going to look at that case and say, you know what? The president certainly has authority to make these kinds of decisions and to make these kinds of orders, and his administration is carrying out the policies of a president with regard to foreign policy, and that is the purview of the President of the United States, not the Supreme Court, and not the state, not the Congress, not the House, not the Senate. It is fully the responsibility of the President of the United States and the agencies under his control. They get to determine this within the boundaries of the law, and I can't find, tell me where the law was violated. Show me the law that was violated. I don't hear anybody doing that. 59, make that 29 minutes, almost 30 minutes past the hour. Time for the news.
"12:30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast in 5 minutes. Uber is being sued. U.S. Federal Trade Commission claiming the rideshare is engaging in deceptive practices. Stocks are down today. The Dow and S&P almost 3%. NASDAQ is down 3%. Sherry Preston.
Less than an hour after the opening bell, the S&P had lost 2% of its value, putting it 16% below the record set just 2 months ago. The value of the U.S. dollar, which has historically strengthened during turbulent times, also continues to fall. Analysts are worried the Trump tariffs could lead to recession if not pulled back. They're also concerned about recent comments the president made about Fed Chair Jerome Powell, angry at him for not lowering interest rates to boost the economy.
President Trump making brief remarks about the death of Pope Francis today. The president speaking at the White House Easter egg roll, accompanied by First Lady Melania.
He was a good man, worked hard. He loved the world, and it's an honor to do that.
Earlier, the president posting on social media saying, "Rest in peace, Pope Francis. May God bless him and all those who loved him."
I just signed an executive order putting the flags of our country, all of them, all federal flags and state flags, at half-mast in honor of Pope Francis.
And President Trump expected to attend the Pope's funeral later this week. There's been another incident requiring the evacuation of a passenger jet this morning in Orlando.
As the Delta Airlines Airbus A330 was pushing back from the gate in Orlando heading to Atlanta, an engine caught fire. There were 282 passengers, 10 flight attendants, and 2 pilots on board. Passengers evacuated down the emergency slides to get away from the fire. Delta says the flight crew followed procedure by evacuating the plane, and the maintenance teams will examine the aircraft. The fire was contained to the engine and was quickly out. Nobody was injured as passengers evacuated. Alex Stone, ABC News.
That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
37 minutes past the hour, 12 o'clock. Brian Wilson in the chair for Chad Benson. You're listening to the Chad Benson Show. Ken Weaver in the newsroom, and we got Bel K pushing the blinky buttons. Hey, Ken, I may have told you.
What's that?
Well, I may have mentioned in one of my earlier appearances that shortly after I left, full-time employment at TN and just became a, sort of a fill-in guy, I started getting phone calls. Threatening phone calls.
Yes.
And I've mentioned this 2 or 3 times, on my Wednesday gathering with Dan. But I was getting these phone calls that were saying, "You're a loser. We know where you live. Hope you sleep well at night." This kind of stuff. Very threatening, sort of on the bubble of being threatening.
I apologize for that.
Yeah. No, it wasn't you. It wasn't you. Because, sometimes it would be a woman. Sometimes it would be a man. Sometimes it would seem to have sort of maybe a foreign accent. I couldn't really tell. But one way or the other, they would come like 2 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night. And they would always, it would be like no caller ID. So you couldn't track them.
Right.
So I raised this. I called my local police department. They were nice enough to come by and make sure that they were coming by my house on a regular basis. I upped the security around my house. You don't want to come messing at my house. I got cameras everywhere. I got a vicious French bulldog who will give you trouble.
Oh, yeah.
And not only that, we're bristling with weaponry here. So, they don't want to come and give me any trouble at my house.
Right.
And so nothing ever really happened, but the calls would still come, and I couldn't figure it out. Every once in a while, the calls would have a reference to Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Okay.
And in a very profane way most of the time. And so I'm going, why? And so I call all the other guys at the radio station, and I say, "Hey, are you getting any of these kind of calls?" No. I talked to some of my other friends in broadcasting. They said they weren't getting any calls like this. And it was a mystery. Why am I getting all these calls? And it finally, like a light bulb went off this weekend. Somebody told me that Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend is named Brian Glenn.
Oh, boy.
My full name is Brian Glenn Wilson.
Yeah.
Glenn is my middle name, but it's his last name. He's apparently a broadcaster, a conservative broadcaster. I've got some information here on him. He worked on, let's see. He worked at Real America's. He's currently working for Real America's Voice and Right Side Broadcasting Network. He is dating Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene since 2023. And so here we have a perfect example. This is how dumb they are. They couldn't even figure out that I wasn't Marjorie Taylor. I live in Tennessee.
Right.
How could I be dating Marjorie Taylor Greene? I've never even met the woman. That's why I was saying, I've never even met Marjorie Taylor Greene. I've never been in the same room with her. I've never laid eyes on her. I've never, as far as I know, been in her company. And so why are they picking on me? And it turns out that they were so stupid that they couldn't figure out that the Brian Glenn and Brian Glenn Wilson are two different people.
Yeah.
Dumb.
So is it still happening?
Well, I read the other day that they had begun investigating threatening phone calls made to both Marjorie Taylor Greene and to her boyfriend Brian Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
And so and about that time it seemed to sort of drop off. So either they got spooked or they finally figured out that I wasn't the guy they were looking for. But isn't that a piece of work?
I'm glad
it really was worrisome to us for a while.
Well,
we were really
man.
concerned about it because some of these things were I could play them for you, but I can't play them on the radio because most of them are very profane.
Right.
But they were, hey, we know where you are. We know your address, and they would recite my address.
Yeah.
And then they would say, keep looking over your shoulder, Wilson, things like that. Or keep looking over. They never said Wilson. So I guess that finally that they figured it out. And because I think now that that's being investigated, I think they have sort of stopped doing it. But isn't that just tells you that they don't even take enough time to figure, out that the person they're harassing is the right person.
Well, and kind of what you said before, they were messing with the wrong person too. Brian Wilson's out of West Texas that I know pretty much have eyes in the back of their head. So you best tread lightly.
Yeah. So anyway, but after weeks, we finally figured out why I was getting these phone calls among no other broadcasters that I knew were getting them. Apparently, Brian Glenn was getting them, but I wasn't.
Well, I'm glad you got that resolved.
Yeah, I am too. I'm glad to know that that there's nothing much to worry about. But I mean, I tell you what, it is very disconcerting to get a call, no caller ID.
Yeah.
And normally I don't pick those up, but they left a message and they would say things like, you're an idiot, you're a loser. How can you sleep at night?
Right.
Keep looking over your shoulder. We know where you are. We know who you are. We know where you live. That kind of stuff.
So you don't like leftist compassion?
No, I don't.
Well, so they've launched. So the FBI has launched an investigation, and so you think they're going to be able to round these folks up?
No, I hope so. But all I know is that it has dropped off, and I haven't had one in a while.
Good.
And I think it coincides with the fact that there was, I think, a story about a week ago that said, we're investigating these threatening phone calls being made to Marjorie Taylor Greene and her boyfriend, but I never heard the boyfriend's name until I read this story.
That's like a puzzle. That's like finding the last piece of a puzzle right there.
Yeah.
Where does he live?
I don't know. I think he went to school in Texas. Glenn is dating Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia. In an interview with Political, they started seeing each other in 2023. He's from the industry. He's a great resource. He explained a lot, like how things work. And yeah, it's great, said Greene in April of 23. Supporter of President Trump. Multiple videos on YouTube coming to his defense against liberals at events and calling his recent inauguration Liberation Day. But I don't see where he lives other than he grew up in Beaumont, Texas.
Well, that's nowhere near your area of Texas.
No, certainly not. So, two guys from Texas, both named Brian, both named Brian Glenn. They're just that's Glenn's his last name, and Glenn's my middle name, and my last name is Wilson. I use my real name, but I thought that was hilarious and a total example of how the left. They're so stupid. They're so dumb that they don't even take the time to figure out. If we're going to harass somebody, at least, for goodness sake, harass the right person. Would you?
Yeah.
It's 45 minutes now past the hour.
Uber being sued by the federal government. Stocks are tumbling again. And, of course, Pope Francis has passed away. What's next? All this and more at 1 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Ken Weaver. Brian Wilson in for the Chad Benson show. He's taking a day off. Be back tomorrow. As far as I know, be back tomorrow. And it's always good to slide in here and sort of, get some things off my chest. I used to have 4 hours a day to talk about the things that were on my mind, and I very, very seldom left feeling that I hadn't gotten it all across. I got everything off my chest. And then all of a sudden, I don't have 4 hours anymore. Yeah. I have to take my shots when I get them.
Well, and your neighbors are probably not happy about the bullhorn either.
That's right. I just sit around and talk to the dog. Grogu, you're never going to believe what happened today. Oh, anyway. No, the thing we're really involved in is a kitchen renovation.
Oh, boy.
I'm telling you.
Whoo, Cabana Wife's going to be even more lethal now.
I thought your kitchen looked really nice when we were out there for the party.
Yeah, you should see it now. It's got granite. It's got this sort of, I don't know what you call it, this really cool backsplash. And
nice.
Yeah, we've been renovating the kitchen and the pantry.
All right.
And I have, every once in a while I get asked my opinion. And then if I don't say the right thing, said, well, we're going to do it this way.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, how far does that opinion go?
My opinion is considered briefly, and then basically, it's being done the way Dawn wants it. But
So if your opinion matches hers, then you're golden.
Good. Yeah, she loves it. She wants to, and but if it doesn't, and then she still wins out. So I don't even know why she bothers. Just do it the way you want to do it. But it's beautiful. It's really coming together, and that's been sort of one of the first big post-retirement projects. And so basically, everything that was in the kitchen and the pantry is now in our living room. So I'm really ready for this kitchen renovation to end up, but we're about done on that. So that's what I've been spending my time on.
Staying out of the way.
Yeah, that's right. I do notice, however, that this president is finding favor with the American. Oh, the Democrats will have you believe that he's the worst thing since sliced bread. But when you start looking at the statistics, even the folks over at CNN, that nice Harry Enton, had to admit that Donald Trump, his policies are resonating with the American people.
So President Trump and his campaign promises. When it comes to immigration, he followed through with the sweeping crackdown that he campaigned on. He promised sweeping policy changes as well on the economy from the campaign. Two of his biggest campaign focuses were on immigration and economy. And Harry Enton is running the numbers on those issues today, specifically on where the president is putting much of his focus right now and why. Talk to me about immigration and how Americans feel about it right now.
Yeah, why is Trump focusing on immigration? Let me just tell you, this is where Trump wants to focus. Pretty please, with a cherry on top. Why is that? Look at Trump's net approval rating on immigration. Compare where we are now, compare where we were at this point in his first term. In his first term, he was underwater at minus 12 points. Look at where he is today. He's actually above water. This is one of his strongest issues at plus 1 point. And more than that on the net approval for him on this issue has stayed steady in the positive. This is an area where Donald Trump wants to focus because the bottom line is this is an area in which the American people, at least the bare majority of them, seem to like what he's doing.
And you've shown the impact on how people feel about his handling of the economy and what he's been doing. So let's stay here with this. Compare where he is on immigration to where Biden was. We know that this was why he leaned into immigration so much.
Yes, this is a big reason why. So take a look here. This is on immigration. What track are we on? The right track or the wrong track? Look in December. Look at the percentage who said we were on the wrong track. 62% of Americans when Joe Biden was in office, compared to just 14% who said that we were on the right track. Flash forward to April. Well, hello. 45% say we're on the right track compared to 42% who say we're on the wrong track. So in a big switcheroo from where we were back in January, the plurality of Americans say that the country is on the right track.
There you go. On the right track. Deporting illegal immigrants, 56% are in favor of doing it. That according to, even CNN has to acknowledge that. some people say, well, yeah, but the market is up and the market is down. And what about all these tariffs? And what are we going to do about this? And I'm a little worried about, and well, look, there's an old saying that you got to break some eggs to make an omelet. And that's all that's going on here. We are making a major change economically to, trying with these tariffs and all that kind of stuff. And it will have an impact. People are coming to the doorway now and wanting to cut a deal. China will eventually do so. They need us much worse than we need them. And I'm just not worried about it. Not in the least. Yes, it'll all work out just fine. Believe me. Yeah. Okay. So we're charging people more, and China specifically a lot more to bring in their products. So that means the prices are going to go up, right? And what does that mean? Inflation. Yeah. But there are other factors at play here that I think will have a real impact on that. Let me see. I got it right here. 50. Yeah. Gasoline prices down since Easter of last year, 51 cents a gallon. Now, you've heard me say it. I'll say it again. When you reduce the price of energy across the board, that really helps inflation, because every single part of our economy relies on energy to produce and deliver the goods and services that business creates. So when the price of gasoline comes down, that's right, the price of food will start to come down. We're seeing that now. American-made foods will be the price of eggs, for example. Yeah, I know they're expensive, but I think they have come down a bit since they're high. So what I'm saying here is, there will be offsetting things. And believe me, over time, these tariffs are all going to work out. We're going to get a tremendous amount of money in the short term coming into our coffers. I would much rather have China, pay a bunch of money to the United States Treasury than have you and me put a lot of money in that Treasury. It was used for years. There were many, many, many presidents and many, many administrations, and there was a great period of time in this country where we made most of our money off tariffs and not taxes. So that's going to resolve itself. Already Japan's at the table. These other countries are going to come to the table. They can't afford to have, a trade war with the United States. It's a little tougher nut to crack when you're talking about China, because China has shown that they will take a lot of pain. But the pressure has got to be there. It will really hurt their economy, and again, hurt their economy a lot more than it hurts ours. Will there be an adjustment period? Yes. Will the prices go up? Yes, some prices will go up. Some prices will go down. Some will stay the same. But yeah, we're doing a complete realignment of our economy. You have to have a little short-term pain to have the long-term gain. No pleasure without a little pain first. So there you have that. I mean, I just think it's going to be okay. And everybody seems to think that this is the end of the economy as we know it, and the market's all nervous. Everybody take a deep breath, everybody. Just take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. And remember, you're being played by the Democrats who want to make this the worst administration in the history of all administrations. So they're going to go out there and they're going to trash everything that's being done. They're going to create a bunch of angst and anguish. The American people need to stand strong. It's going to be okay. Coming up in the next hour here on the Chad Benson Show, what's all this stuff about Pete Hegseth and a second Signal case? They call it Signal Gate. We'll get to that coming up in just a short while. You're listening to the Chad Benson Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
One o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast in 5 minutes. And Uber being sued by the federal government. Federal Trade Commission alleging the rideshare and delivery companies charging people for its Uber One subscription service without their consent, fails to deliver promised savings, makes it too hard to cancel the service despite its cancel anytime promises. The press release from the FTC says the Trump-Vance FTC is fighting back on behalf of the American people. Stocks are tumbling again. Here's Sherry Preston.
About an hour after trading began on Monday, the Dow sank more than 1,000 points, and the value of the dollar continued losing ground. Traders are increasingly concerned about U.S. markets and of a looming recession if tariffs imposed by President Trump aren't pulled back. Tech stocks, including Tesla, continue losing ground ahead of earnings reports that are due out this week.
Also, investors concerned about recent comments the president made disparaging Fed Chair Jerome Powell, posting to Truth Social that Powell is a, quote, major loser. President angry at him for not lowering interest rates to boost the economy.
This is a special report from ABC News. I'm Michelle Franzen. The faithful gathering in St. Peter's Square this hour in Rome, where the Vatican is leading a rosary prayer service to honor Pope Francis, who died earlier today. Francis, who became known as the People's Pope, traveled the world up until he was hospitalized recently for double pneumonia. The 88-year-old pontiff participated in Easter Sunday services and rode through St. Peter's Square, greeting the crowd. Vice President Vance met with the Pope Sunday at the Vatican. ABC's Rachel Scott says President Trump has ordered flags be flown at half-staff across the country in his honor.
President Trump met with Pope Francis just once in 2017. He had called it the honor of a lifetime, but there were some disagreements in their relationship, specifically on immigration. Recently, when Pope Francis was asked about the president's mass deportation plans, he said, if true, would be disgraceful, warning that it would end very badly.
After his funeral, cardinals will convene and choose his successor.
Meta says it's cracking down on teenagers suspected of lying about their age on the social media platforms. Here's Mike Dubusky.
Using artificial intelligence, Meta now says it's going to automatically place users suspected of being underage into a more restrictive form of account on Facebook and Instagram. Teen accounts were rolled out last year and limit who can see and who can message with a teenager's profile.
Meta also says it's giving people the option to change their settings in, quote, in case we make a mistake. Chipotle Mexican Grill, heading someplace it's never been before, Mexico. Chipotle's been around since 1993 and has 3,700 restaurants worldwide, but despite the fact the country is literally in its name, it's never opened one in Mexico. That's about to change. Chipotle partnering with the company that operates Domino's, Starbucks, Burger King, and Chili's in South America and Europe to open its first restaurant in Mexico City and to explore other locations in the region as well. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Brian Wilson, your friend and retired radio buddy. I'm filling in today for Chad Benson. This is the Chad Benson Show all the way till 3 o'clock. Then, Matt Murphy will be stepping up and doing his program. We'll talk to Matt a little bit later. Glad to be with you. I've been doing a little travel. What you been doing? I've been traveling some. I have a big bad van. You ever see you know what a Class B van is? Now it's one of those vans where you have a bed and a little sink and that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's what I have. Been going around the country seeing folks. It's been good. But today I want to get into the news of the day. And our friend Pete Hegseth. You remember when I had the afternoon show? Pete would be a regular person who come on and do his thing every Wednesday, and he was always good and reliable. And then he got to be the Secretary of Defense, and we thought there for a while he wasn't going to make that, but he turned it around in a dramatic way. But boy, the long knives are still out for Pete Hegseth. They're trying to do everything they can to trip this guy up, who's, I think, completely committed to doing what needs to be done at the Pentagon, which is turn it back into an agency that is prepared to go to war and to break things and to do whatever needs to be done, kill bad people when that needs to happen. That's what we need our military to do. We don't need it to be a woke organization, and he's taking care of all that, but the long knives are out, and the Democrats are looking for anything, and there's a lot of people inside the Pentagon, long-timers, people who have been buried in there for a while, part of the deep state, who are working against him every step of the way. Not an easy job. So what is the latest, controversy? Here's from CNBC. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth used his personal phone to send information about U.S. military operations in Yemen to a 13-person Signal group chat, including his wife and brother, two sources with knowledge of the matter confirmed to NBC News. He did so after an aide warned him to be careful not to share sensitive information on an unsecure communication system before the Yemen operation, the sources said. Well, Signal is completely, what do you want to call it? It's got all kinds of security measures on top of it. It's all encrypted. That's the word I'm looking for. Encrypted. From beginning to end, it's encrypted. My understanding is that a great number of people in government use it because it is safe to use, and they know that it's not easily unencrypted, and they think they can send messages and get things done. It's apparently approved for use in the United States government. No ban on this on phones for government officials. To my knowledge, that's the way it's been explained to me. So number one, to say that it's an unsecure situation, the information was encrypted. Maybe they have a way to unencrypt it. I don't know, but one way or the other, it was encrypted. And the other thing is that, this all comes from anonymous sources. Nobody wants to put their name to it. Something that Hegseth pointed out this weekend at the Easter egg roll.
See, this is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputations. Not going to work with me, because we're changing the Defense Department, putting the Pentagon back in the hands of warfighters, and anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter. So I'm happy to be here at the Easter egg roll with my dad and my kids, because, this is what we're doing it for. These kids right here. This is why we're fighting the fake news media. This is why we're fighting slash and burn Democrats. This is why we're fighting hoaxsters. This group, this group right here, full of hoaxsters that peddle anonymous sources from leakers with access to grind, and then you put it all together as if it's some news story. And when we know exactly what it is. So I'm really proud of what we're doing for the president, fighting hard across the board, and I'm going to go roll some Easter eggs with my kids.
Yeah, roll some Easter eggs. So Pete Hegseth not having much over. So the question is, okay, well, Pete Hegseth says that, but what happens with the rest of the Trump administration? Will the president continue to support him? every indication this morning on the morning shows is that indeed the president is standing behind Pete Hegseth. Here is White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
The president stands strongly behind Secretary Hegseth, who is doing a phenomenal job leading the Pentagon. And this is what happens when the entire Pentagon is working against you and working against the monumental change that you are trying to implement. Secretary Hegseth was nominated for this position because he is standing up for the war fighter, the men and women in uniform who are putting their lives on the line to protect our country and our homeland. And unfortunately, there have been people at that building who don't like the change the secretary is trying to bring, so they are leaking and they are lying to the mainstream media. We've seen this game played before. The secretary is doing a tremendous job, and the president stands strongly behind him.
Caroline, I also think it's important to bring up that this chat happened before confirmation. While confirmation was taking place, and also it just is kind of very curious for me. They're not interested in what these people were leaking, which seems serious. They're interested in the Secretary of Defense, who wasn't.
That's right. They are lying about the Secretary of Defense. Let me reiterate, no classified information was shared in these chats. But you do have leakers who are leaking classified information, which is a crime, I will add. And so the administration and the president have taken a very strong stance against anyone who leaks, especially sensitive and classified information that can put our troops and our warfighters at risk. And you've seen the secretary has taken very strong action to rein in the leakers at the Pentagon, and he will continue to do so, I'm sure.
Caroline Leavitt, boy, is she good. She's really good. She gets out there and she just says it, and it's I mean, so fun to watch a press secretary who knows how to answer questions, unlike the past press secretary. But she's in there, and look, here's the thing you got to know. The question is the president standing behind Pete Hegseth? And the indications are from Caroline Leavitt that he is, that he has the support, continued support of the President of the United States. And when you're a member of the cabinet, when you serve as Secretary of Defense or any other secretary post, guess what? You serve at the pleasure of the President. I don't think this is a big deal. I don't think it is a thing. One of the people, his brother, by the way, is a Pentagon employee. So if it's a completely encrypted app, and most of the people that were on this were related to, related to the case, had reasons to know. Joe Casper, Hegseth's chief of staff at the time, Darren Selnick, his deputy chief of staff, Eric Garrissey, a retired Army sergeant major and an advisor to Hegseth, Tim Parlator, a legal advisor to Hegseth and a Navy commander in the Judge Advocate General's Corps. Hegseth's brother Phil is a senior advisor to Hegseth for the Department of Homeland Security. And Hegseth's wife. Now, that's the only one that you can really point to where they went, is that something that she needed to know? I don't know. But again, it was on an encrypted app. And according to Caroline Leavitt, nothing that was said in those posts was classified information. So, again, this is what it is to be in the Trump administration. They're going to come at you, and they're going to come at you, and they're going to come at you. They're going to try to build a case against you. They're going to try to tell you that, they're going to try to take you down. And they hate Hegseth more than most, because of his desire to go and take all of the DEI out of the Pentagon. He wants to turn it into a powerful war-fighting machine, which is what it should be, and the Democrats are just very intimidated by that. They're going to keep coming. Don't worry. When it's something, we'll tell you it's something, but most of this stuff is just piddly stuff, just poking the bear. Just trying to create a controversy where none exists. And Hegseth is right. You got a name with that allegation? Bring me a name, then we'll talk. 15 minutes now, past the hour of 1 o'clock.
Pope Francis died of a stroke and irreversible heart failure, according to the Vatican doctor in a death certificate. We've got that story and more coming up at 1:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It is 20 minutes now past the hour. Ken Weaver there in the newsroom, and Bell K pushing the blinky buttons. Glad to have you there. I am Brian Wilson filling in for Chad Benson, who will be back tomorrow in his regular chair. You heard Ken talk about it, and it will be talked about in the news here in just a moment. But indeed, we have lost Pope Francis at the age of 88. I don't think it's a big surprise to a lot of people. He was very frail and had been sick for some time now. But I don't think, he made an appearance yesterday. And then today we are told that he has passed on. 7:35 this morning, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father. His entire life was dedicated to the service of the Lord and of his church. He taught us to live the values of the gospel with faithfulness, courage, and universal love, especially in favor of the poorest and the marginalized, said Cardinal Kevin Farrell in a live video address. So now we go through the process of looking for a new pope. Pope Benedict was elected to the church as the 226th Pope after the retirement of Benedict the 16th in 2013. He was born as Jorge Mario Bergoglio in the middle-class neighborhood of Flores, Buenos Aires. He's the first Jesuit pope, the first pope from the Southern Hemisphere, the first person from outside of Europe selected to lead the church in nearly 1,300 years. That was after Pope Gregory of Syria, who was chosen in 731. He was a rather progressive individual, the son of an Italian immigrant father and Italian-Argentine mother. Francis was the eldest of 5 children. As a student, he worked as a janitor and a nightclub bouncer before becoming a chemical technician. Ordained a Jesuit priest in 1969, became head of the Society of Jesus Order of Argentina and Uruguay in 1973 at the youthful age of 36, holding that position until 1979. Pope John Paul II appointed Francis a bishop in 1992. 6 years later, Francis became Archbishop of Buenos Aires, and John Paul made him a cardinal. He was one who said he did not think that it was right to deny Joe Biden communion, said that communion is not a prize for the perfect, even though many who wanted to deny him that, he was against that idea. He said, I've never refused the Eucharist to anyone. Said he called on bishops to be pastors, not politicians. What must the pastor do? Be a pastor. Don't go condemning. Be a pastor because he is a pastor also for the excommunicated. He stated his opposition to abortion, calling it homicide. Whoever has an abortion kills, he said. Although Francis strived to avoid an escalation in the culture war and a polarization of his flock, he offered encouraging words to LGBTQ plus Catholics while flying back to Rome from Portugal in August of 23. He told reporters that the Catholic Church was open to all and that he has a duty to accompany people on their personal path of spirituality within the framework of its rules. And during one event in Portugal, Francis touted the inclusive nature of the church by leading a crowd in the chant of todos, 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 which means everyone, everyone, everyone. He did say in 2023 that priests could bless same-sex couples, which was a major change in Vatican policy. The Pope had said such blessings should not resemble marriages, but that people seeking God's love and mercy should not be subject to an exhaustive moral analysis to receive it. He wanted a greater role for women in the church, particularly in high-ranking Vatican positions. In April of 23, he announced he had decided to give women the right to vote in the upcoming meeting of the bishops. It was a historic first and accomplished 2 goals: giving women greater decision-making responsibility and allowing lay people to stay in the life of the church. So there you go. He had apparently lost a lung when he was young due to a pulmonary illness, but it never affected his work. In recent years, he's had ongoing health issues, including various respiratory problems, the flu, and multiple surgeries. He was hospitalized for the first time as Pope when he underwent colon surgery in 21. The Vatican said the operation had been planned, but the announcement sent shockwaves through the church. Hospitalized in late March of 23, treated for bronchitis. He quipped a journalist before being driven away. He was still alive, and over 2 months later, he had surgery to repair a hernia. So a lot of issues that had sort of plagued him, health issues, in the last few years. And for some time now, I think we have known, I worked at Fox News for a time, and, we had always had a shelf full of biographies or bios of the people who were important in the world. And it is not a surprise that all of the major networks have gone through and have sort of updated their obituaries that were on the shelf in recent days. And so when the announcement came down, they pulled that off the shelf, and they had to report the life and times. They're ready to go. So, like I say, for news people who watch these kinds of things very closely and have a need to be ready in case, somebody of importance dies, it is not a shock and a surprise. I think to many Americans waking up this morning and having seen him over Easter Sunday, he didn't look really strong, didn't look really well. But I think it was a bit of a surprise this morning to hear that the man we saw yesterday had passed away as of 7:30 Rome time, I guess, this morning. Pope Francis, 88. Now we have to have an official conclave of the bishops. You know how this all works out. They all come in for meetings, and they will take a vote. They have to have a 2/3 vote in support of a candidate. And when that happens, they will burn the ballots in a way that the smoke will be white. If they take a vote and they did not come to a 2/3 majority, then they burn the black smoke. And we see the black smoke rising. We know we don't have a pope. White smoke is rising. We do have a pope. Be interesting to see whether the church continues down this rather progressive leaning policy, or whether a more conservative pope will come in and bring that to, it seems like we are going through a trend in the world where conservatism is found with greater favor. So I don't know exactly how it's all going to play out. I don't pretend to have any real inside knowledge about Catholic politics or the whole process, but I do know that he was looked at as rather progressive, and there is a possibility that there could be someone who would perhaps change the direction of the Catholic Church one way or the other. Pope Francis dead at the age of 88. That's, what a remarkable life this guy's had. I'd say that I'm not Catholic, far from it, I'm a Baptist, but I can't say that I completely always agreed with the Holy Father and the way he interpreted the scriptures, not entirely. But there's no doubt about it. For many people in this world, this is a man who is their spiritual leader, and a sad moment for practicing Catholics in this country when you lose a path or lose a pope, even one who people may have had a disagreement with. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see with all the transition that we've had toward a more conservative. I mean, it's happening around the world. It's not just in America, this trend toward conservatism. The question I think I have right now is whether or not the Catholic Church will move a little more to the right or continue its trek to the left. And if so, what impact will that have on the church? Interesting stuff to consider. Coming up in a moment, I want to talk about the Democrats and what they're up to, and they've been lost. They tried to figure out what's next. They got their butts kicked in the last election, and they're trying to regroup. How's that going? And who are the people that are being looked at as potential rising stars within the Democrat Party? Can you imagine the possibility of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez actually being nominated to be president of the United States? A lot of people think that that's what should happen. We'll talk about all that and much more after the news. It is 1:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Drivers in Sumner County, heads up. Got the left lane blocked 65 northbound right there at exit 98. That's going to be Louisville Highway. TDOT is reporting a crash there. Then over by the airport, center lane is blocked by a crash, according to TDOT. This is going to be 40 eastbound right there at Briley Parkway. Pope Francis died of a stroke and irreversible heart failure. That, according to the Vatican doctor in a death certificate this morning. He was 88. So what happens next is steeped in hundreds of years of tradition, says Aaron Katersky.
Eventually, his body will be moved from his residence, where it was placed in a simple casket, to St. Peter's for lying in state, and the public can pay respects. And we would expect tens of thousands of people from all over the world to come and pay tribute to Pope Francis.
President Trump expected to attend the funeral later this week. Over on Wall Street, markets losing ground today. The Dow tumbling at least 1,000 points at the opening bell this morning. Investors worried about tariffs. Then President Trump disparaging Fed Chair Jerome Powell for not reducing interest rates, posting to Truth Social that Powell is a, quote, major loser. And then you've got China threatening other countries that make a deal with the U.S., which the communist regime says comes at China's expense. They will be reciprocating. And the Homeland Security Secretary has been the victim of theft. Happened over the weekend. Purse was stolen. Here's ABC News national correspondent Stephen Portnoy.
A Homeland Security official says the incident happened at a downtown D.C. restaurant where Kristi Noem was treating her family to an Easter meal. A masked man is believed to have taken the secretary's purse as he walked by her table. Inside the bag, Noem's passport, her department access card, the key to her D.C. apartment, and $3,000 in cash. The Secret Service is investigating.
That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
It's 36 minutes past the hour. Brian Wilson filling in for Chad Benson on the Chad Benson Show. Glad to be here with you on this 21st day of April, the day after Easter. Hope you had a great time with family. Hope the Easter Bunny was good to you. I attended the Watertown Easter egg hunt, which was quite the thing. And we had 15,000 eggs and the cutest little Easter Bunny that you could ever imagine. She was adorable. Yeah, you know, the Easter Bunny was a she. Yeah, she was adorable, and I liked her so much that I took her home. She came home with me.
Now, what's Grogu think about that?
Grogu, I put on. Well, I got to be careful here because there might be kiddos listening. Grogu was not at all. I thought Grogu would lose her ever-loving mind.
Yeah.
When she saw the Easter Bunny.
Right.
But she didn't seem to mind at all.
Well, I'll be.
She just sort of, oh, hi. Oh, there you go.
That's not her first rodeo.
Yeah.
Grogu's been through a few Easters.
That's right. So anyway, it was a great event. I mean, you should see those kids scramble out there. 15,000 eggs on in a baseball field, and they just were running like crazy. I bet every kid there walked away with 100 eggs.
All right.
I mean, it was really something. But anyway, good time. Everybody's looking at the Democrats right now, and they seem to be in complete and utter disarray. They keep doing stupid things, you got this Chris Van Hollen guy who goes out there and says, I'm going to go to El Salvador and make the case to release a guy who's pretty clearly an MS-13 figure of some kind. And, they seem to be making the case for that, which is wholly unpopular. Wholly unpopular in America. 56% of Americans want people who are in this country illegally to go home. We often hear this term tossed around that it's an 80-20 issue. 80% of Americans like what Trump is doing with regard, and 20% don't. And the Democrats universally take the 20% issue. And I look at them, I say, really? These are the hills that you want to die on? These are the things that you want to fight and make a bunch of noise about in an attempt to bring back the American people who have abandoned you? So many people abandoned this last election. So the question is, who's going to be the next leader? What direction is the Democrat Party going to go? And who might be the leaders of this party? I'm telling you, it's a pretty sad-looking group of names here. Let's go with the one that everybody's talking about right now, and see what you think. Representative Ocasio-Cortez, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. According to thehill.com, I'm reading from that, Ocasio-Cortez is simply the most exciting figure in Democrat politics. She has a legion of detractors, but she also has charisma, authenticity, and the ability to draw huge crowds to see her speak. The Fighting Oligarchy Tour, boy, they love, using that term oligarchy. The Fighting Oligarchy Tour with Sanders has felt like the passing of a torch. We're talking about Bernie Sanders here. The 35-year-old AOC, as she is universally known, seems the obvious inheritor of Bernie Sanders' mantle as the de facto leader of the, I would add, far left. Sanders, now 83, will surely never be a traditional national candidate. There is no one else in the left-wing lane who could come close to competing with Ocasio-Cortez in a primary, according to The Hill. That's a real advantage in a race that could have a plethora of center-left candidates splitting the more moderate vote. In other words, she'll be far left, and if Democrats are smart, they'll put up some more moderate candidates to compete against the Republicans. Because clearly, America has shifted. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, does anybody take her seriously? I mean, apparently there are a group of young people who really love her and think she's the greatest thing, and the progressive, they just run to her and they think she's fabulous and all that. But I mean, the vast majority of Americans, I think, look at her and think she's sort of a joke. She doesn't have a real deep understanding of the major issues of the day. She has a reliably leftist position on everything. I say if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the choice of the Democrats to run for the office of presidency, I say give me all of that you can give me, because she'll get 30% of the vote. But I don't think she'll get a lot of that vote. I think a lot of Democrats will say she's far, far too liberal, far, far to the left, reactionary positions that are far to the left on every category. And I just don't think that America's ready for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, President Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I just can't see it. I don't see it at all. Who else? Number 2, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Shapiro, he's been in the news for the arsonist case where his governor's mansion got burned. That was a bad deal. Shapiro is Jewish. He's been among the most pro-Israel leading figures of the Democrat Party. That is not going to sit well with some parts of the Democrat Party who seem to have forsaken Israel. Shapiro is the most likely person to emerge as the real center-left challenger to a progressive such as Ocasio-Cortez. Number 3, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Yeah, she's the one who put the binders in front of her face. I think it killed her. I think it really hurt her. She looks so stupid, so dumb. So you come to the White House. Everybody knows you're coming to the White House. These things are not a big secret. And when the cameras come in, you hide your face because you're ashamed you're at the White House. Whitmer says she was set up by the White House. I don't think that was the case at all. I think she really looked stupid. It looked dumb. And, all you can do in a situation like that is say, you're the governor of a state. You have business with the federal government. And you come to talk to the President of the United States about the things that are important to you, and that's what she should do. That's what a governor should do. But yet she seemed to be ashamed of her gubernatorial duties and put the binders in front of her face. Number 4, California Governor Gavin Newsom. Timing is everything, the Hill writes, and the political calendar falls nicely for California Governor Gavin Newsom. He will be term limited out of office after the 2026 election, just as the primary campaign looms. The governor of the nation's most populous state is an effective speaker and TV performer. He is tangled with Trump, and he's also tried more recently to reach out beyond the traditional Democrat base. Trenchantly right-wing guests, including Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk, have featured them on his podcast. Newsom has also emerged relatively unscathed, politically speaking, from the catastrophic Los Angeles wildfires, unlike the city's mayor, Karen Bass. Number 5, I think, is a guy to watch. I think this is a guy who could very well be the next Democrat nominee, Maryland Governor Wes Moore. He's likable, he's media-friendly, a powerful speaker, youthful, just 46. He broke the barrier to become Maryland's first black governor. Now, look, I don't agree with him on anything, don't get me wrong, but I think he's a very attractive candidate, and I think this is a guy that most people don't know about, but as they learn more about him, I think he's going to rise within the ranks. The one thing you don't want to be in this whole process is the person that everybody thinks is the presumptive nominee. That never works out well. You don't want to be the person everybody thinks is going to be it, because then the long knives will be out and they'll be coming after you. You want to be that person like Maryland Governor Wes Moore. Sort of, your credentials are good, you have the skills, you have the ability, and maybe, because people don't know a great deal about you, that works to your advantage at some point in the early going. So I think he has a really, really good chance of being a big player for Democrats in the days going forward. He was elected in 2022. The Hill writes that could be an asset to the extent that he's not part of the political establishment, or a liability if a lack of experience leads to mistakes. Number 6, former Vice President Kamala Harris. I don't know. I can't decide whether she's interested in running again or she's going to run for the office of governor in the state of California. She washed out. She was a horrible candidate nationally. Maybe she learned a little bit. Maybe she'll come back as a stronger gubernatorial candidate. She could run again and seek the nomination, but she's never won in any of those runs. She got it handed to her. She didn't win any primaries. Every time she ran in a primary, she washed out. I'm not sure she can get through the primary process, and I think sort of like with Hillary, the ship has sailed. Absolutely. Number 7, the Hill says, look to Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. He's got money. He's a billionaire. And he, I don't know, might resonate with Democrats. Certainly won't resonate with a lot of people in the middle. Number 8, former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. I don't see him as being the guy. Buttigieg has many fans among the party's younger, more affluent supporters, but he struggled with black voters in 2020, and the highest elected office he's ever held is that of mayor of a small Midwestern town. Number 9, somebody to watch. I remember this guy when he was a member of Congress, and I remember him when he was part of the Clinton administration. Say what you will, whether you like his policies and his politics or not, but this is a guy who understands how to run a campaign. He is a serious candidate. He's a serious man, and he was a pretty good mayor for the city of Chicago, talking about Rahm Emanuel. As Democrats go, this is somebody who I think has a lot of respect within Democrat, the inside Democrat politicians who run the party in a big way, the big power brokers. He's well thought of. In fact, I think you could call him a power broker within the Democrat Party. And a man, I will say, I've seen Rahm Emanuel be willing to negotiate. He's not an all or nothing kind of politician, which I always sort of admired about him. Former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, do I agree with his policies? No. But is he someone who might rise within the ranks of the Democrat Party and become the standard bearer? I could see it. And then we end up with number 10. Media commentator Stephen A. Smith. You may have seen him on Hannity at night. He's a sports analyst, and he seems to be toying with the idea of becoming a Democrat contender. Also in the mix, let's just throw out some other names there. People talk about Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, Senator Cory Booker. I think he is all hat and no cattle. Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, who has been interesting in recent days. I mean, when he first came in, I didn't know what to think of the guy, and I didn't have much of a very high of opinion of him. But I will say, as the Democrats go, he's thoughtful and not reactionary, and somebody who would play to the middle. That seems to be the way he's positioning himself, as somebody who would be in the middle, so he might be somebody to watch. Representative Ro Khanna, don't see it. Amy Klobuchar, disliked widely. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, nope. Senator John Ossoff of Georgia, nope. And Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, no chance in hell for that guy. I just don't see that happening at all. But what really I think is missing right now in the Democrats are issues. I mean, they seem to be adopting the issues that are the most unpopular in America. Will they find a platform that everybody can agree to? Or is it going to actually, some people have talked about the Democrat Party actually splitting up. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. 51 past the hour.
Well, the official cause of death to Pope Francis is irreversible heart failure and a stroke. Got that story and more coming up at 2 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Yeah, just before we get to the news with Ken Weaver, let's see what Mark Penn thinks about the Democrats and all of the talk. And, he's in a sort of an agreement. Well, and I'm taking I guess not an agreement. I think it would be a great thing if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez got the nomination. I think bring me all of that you want. She's the heir to Bernie. That's fine. Whatever, bring her out there. And I just think that would be the greatest thing that Democrats could do, because she will not become president of the United States. Mark Penn says that he thinks that there's no chance that she'll become the president of the United States, and it could be very bad for Democrats.
Well, you know that in a situation like this, where the party essentially has none of the branches of government and lost an election significantly and handily, that there is no leader of the party. And AOC is trying to fill that vacuum. Bernie Sanders, frankly, he could get, as we've seen, 30, 40% of a Democratic primary. And so she's going to have a significant base. He's clearly passing the torch to her. And there is a strong left-wing base in the Democratic Party. Remember, Democrats got one state in 1972, and they got one state in 1984. So the Democratic Party has been in the wilderness multiple times when it goes too far to the left. And so the possibility of that is real. I think in terms of Harris, no way she is going to come back in a presidential race. No way that she would ever win a presidential primary. I don't think it's far-fetched that she might wind up governor of California, because California does not seem to kind of wake up to the nightmare that its elected officials have put itself in as a state that's losing population. I don't think AOC is going to be the nominee of the party. If it is, I think it will be back to one state.
That's right. I mean, I think he's absolutely right about that. It would be an annihilation. So I don't know that Democrats can help themselves. I mean, the party people who are in charge of choosing the nominee are more to the left than other Democrats nationwide. And they're going to love AOC. They're going to think she's the best thing since sliced bread. They're going to lap it up. But if they do, I think Mark Penn, who's a very smart guy, is absolutely right. It's going to turn into one of those situations where you win one state and you get annihilated. So again, I hope that she continues to find favor with Democrats. I want Democrats to rally around Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Give me all of that AOC that you can give me, and I'll take it. I'll be very happy if that's the way the Democrat Party goes. Right now, it could go either way. It could go either way. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7. I'm Brian Wilson filling in on The Chad Benson Show.
It is 2 o'clock. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast in 5 minutes. The gunman who killed nearly 24 people in a racist attack at a Walmart in El Paso in 2019 has pleaded guilty. Patrick Crucius was automatically sentenced to life in prison without parole today. If the plea arrangement proceeds, families will be able to give victim impact statements. Crucia says he targeted Hispanics on August 3rd, 2019, when he drove 700 miles from his home near Dallas and opened fire in that Walmart, killing 23 people who range in age from a 15-year-old high school athlete to elderly grandparents.
This is a special report from ABC News. I'm Michelle Franzen. The Vatican released the death certificate of Pope Francis, saying the Pope suffered a cerebral stroke. ABC News medical contributor Dr. Darian Sutton has more.
So we understand so far that he suffered a cerebral stroke that resulted in a coma as well as cardiovascular collapse. And so those can often be complications of long, complicated hospital courses. The stroke, of course, affecting the brain, cardiovascular collapse affecting the heart and the circulation system.
The Pope died earlier today at St. Peter's Square tonight, the faithful gathering for a nighttime rosary prayer service in his honor. Francis, born in Argentina, dedicated his life to charity and served Catholics around the world, becoming the first Latin and first Jesuit to serve as Pope. The 88-year-old who battled pneumonia made his final appearance at Easter services. Following his funeral, cardinals will convene to vote on a new leader of the 1.4 billion Catholics.
Preventive care health benefits provided at no charge under the Affordable Care Act are in the balance today at the U.S. Supreme Court as the justices consider whether the government task force behind the mandate to insurers is unconstitutional. The case brought by a group of employers and individuals who oppose some of the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force's recommendations for covered services on religious groups, specifically the PrEP medication to prevent HIV. The plaintiffs allege that members of the task force, who are appointed and supervised by the Health and Human Services Secretary, are not properly appointed and have too much power. Lower federal courts agreed, but the Trump administration is defending the constitutionality of the task force and the health secretary's power to oversee that body's recommendations. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hey, everybody, I'm Brian Wilson filling in for Chad Benson today, your friend and radio buddy, but glad to fill in here and we think Chad, well, as far as I know, Chad will be back tomorrow. Everything will be good there. And in the meantime, we're talking about what's going on in Washington. Today, we had the big Easter egg hunt at the White House. It's quite an event. And so there on the podium is Donald Trump, Melania Trump, and the Easter Bunny. And they are very excited about the things that are going on. Which is not exactly what I'd hoped to have happen. Well, anyway, they're very excited, and they say that they're honoring Jesus Christ And we're bringing religion back to America. I apologize for the soundbite that did not play, but that's what he said. Isn't that exciting that we have a president who's willing to say that? That's not imposing religion on anyone. You're free to believe as you want, but, for a long, long time, it was not popular to even mention such things at a White House or a political event. And I'm glad to see that that this is saying. We were talking earlier today with Chris. He said, Chris Hand, talking about how the situation with the movies right now. The King of Kings is apparently like the big movie of the weekend. Did a tremendous. From everything I hear, it's a pretty good movie. It's an animated movie aimed at kids that tells the story of Christ, and it's like it's resonating. People are going. They're attending this movie. Families are showing up at the movie theaters again. How exciting is that? How exciting is that? I want to talk a little bit about the situation with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. We've talked a little bit about this. There's so much about this guy. What we know about this fella is that he came to America illegally when he was 16. He was in and out of the courts, been arrested a number of times. He was identified by the Prince George's County Police Department gang unit as a pretty high-ranking member of MS-13 in Maryland, and there is a very active MS-13 element inside the state of Maryland. And he was apparently identified by the Prince George's County Police Department, a police department that I used to cover on a regular basis when I lived in the Washington, D.C. area. He was identified by them as a member of MS-13. Because of that designation, and all of those concerns, judges took him into court and heard his case. They decided during the Biden years not to remove him, but he was not a legal citizen in the United States. Not a legal citizen, identified as an MS-13 a pretty active member, high-ranking officer within MS-13, carried the title of Chiquero. I don't know what that means, but apparently that is he's beyond being a bottom line flunky. This is a guy who had worked up his way through the MS-13 chain to become a ranking officer of MS-13. He has a history of spousal abuse. A protective order was put out, which describes in great detail, if you read it, how he struck his wife at the time. They eventually patched it up and got back together. He was stopped in Tennessee in 2022, Putnam County, between Nashville and Knoxville, pulled over, and he's in a Suburban SUV. There are 8 people in the Suburban, in the SUV, no luggage. None of them speak English. When asked where they live, they all gave, this guy, Kilmar Abrego Garcia's address as their address. And he said he was taking them from Texas to Maryland for a job. Where was the luggage? State trooper, he was sending off all kinds of alarm bells for the state trooper who stopped him, apparently, reached out to the FBI. Hey, listen, do you want this guy? And even though he was an individual who was identified as MS-13, in 2022, during the Biden years, they decided, by the way, driving without a driver's license, driving with an expired license. Right then and there, that ought to have been enough to take that guy to jail for the night while you dig up and find out what's going on with the individual and reach out to others. But when they reached out, apparently, to the FBI, the Biden-era FBI said, let him go. Take pictures of everybody in the van, let him go. And remarkably, even though this could have been easily prosecuted as a state case, the Tennessee Highway Patrol released him. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And this is what is the difference. Now he gets picked up at an IKEA in Maryland and identified as a guy who's in the country illegally with MS-13 connections. And he was told basically, Well, with the new president and our new policies in place, we're no longer looking at the case the same way the Biden administration did. Your immigration status has changed, and they got him out of the country. What's wrong with that? Nothing wrong with that. That's exactly what should have been done all along. And now you got people like Chris Van Hollen. He's a senator from Maryland. He's out there. He goes all the way to El Salvador to try to make the case that this is a guy who should be released. He was not released, although he has been moved from a high, what do you want to call it, a high security prison into a lesser security prison, but apparently not as a difficult a place to be. But he's still in jail. And here's what Van Hollen said when he came back.
He told me about the trauma he had been experiencing, both in terms of the abduction and the fact that he was originally sent to CCOT, which is this notorious prison.
Yeah, we've seen the
He told
image.
me how much he missed his wife and his kids. He specifically mentioned his 5-year-old boy who has autism because that boy had been in the car with him when U.S. agents had stopped them and handcuffed him and then taken him away.
Does a U.S. senator travel out?
I don't understand why that's a problem. This is a situation. He was in this country illegally. I'm really sorry it happened in front of his autistic son. But when you're in a country illegally and you're identified as a member of MS-13, you've had a couple of court hearings, and they gave you the right to stay in the country for a short time period, but nothing says that's forever. The president of the United States gets to make these decisions, and he can empower the agencies under his control to do anything within the boundaries of the law, and they have interpreted the law in a way that says these people are going back to El Salvador. Supreme Court says, oh, wait a minute. What's going to happen with all that? So you got to wait. You can't take any more action until we have further hearings on this matter. I don't think it's going to change anything. So, but Van Hollen is over in they're choosing to take on this as his big issue. This is the hill he wants to die on, and it's just not resonating with most Americans.
U.S. agents had stopped them and handcuffed him and then taken him away. So he described all that, and he told me that he had moved recently to a new prison facility. So those are some of the highlights.
I want you to listen to something that Gavin Newsom had to say about all the attention this case has gotten.
This is the distraction of the day, the art of distraction. This is the debate they want. This is their 80-20 issue as they've described it.
Is he right about the politics of this? I mean, the Republicans have taken great joy in portraying you as somebody who is defending somebody who's in this country illegally, they say is a gang member, and, you know, and they're saying that they're trying to just enforce the laws.
John, I don't think it's ever wrong to protect the Constitution.
Well, hold it. I would say the Constitution would be protected better by taking the people who have come here in violation of our laws and sending them back to where they came from. That's protecting the Constitution. You don't get to come into this country just because you decide one day that you want to come to this country. You come to this country when you follow the proper procedures, which he did not do. So which of those procedures? Him being sent back to El Salvador, that's really a violation of the Constitution. I would say the violation of the Constitution occurred when he came into this country illegally. Due process. He got due process. He got a lot of due process.
And protect due process rights. I think conservative and libertarians, when they think about this case, the idea of somebody being deprived of their liberty and actually in a foreign prison without due process of law, that's something we should all fight for. I think what Americans are tired of is people who want to put their finger to the wind to see what's going on. And I would say that anyone that's not prepared to defend the constitutional rights of one man when they threaten the constitutional rights of all doesn't deserve to lead.
If you're here in this country illegally, do you have constitutional rights? You're not a citizen. I don't think you do. I don't think you do. In a moment, what Tom Homan has to say about Van Hollen's trip. He's not at all impressed. Right now, it's time for a check of what's going on at 16 minutes past the hour.
The Vatican has released Pope Francis' death certificate, which includes the cause of death. This story and more coming up at 2:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Ken Weaver in the newsroom, bringing us all of the latest information from around the world, across the nation, up the street, down your alley. And then we got Mel K in the control room, push of the blinky buttons. I am Brian Wilson, filling in today for Chad Benson, who will return to this chair tomorrow at his regular time. We were just hearing from Van Hollen, Senator Chris Van Hollen, Democrat from Maryland, went to El Salvador, thinks that due process has been denied. You know what? Tom Homan had a thing or two to say about Van Hollen's trip.
As a U.S. Senator traveled to El Salvador on taxpayer dime to meet with an MS-13 gang member, public safety threat terrorists. I mean, in the meantime, the day before he traveled, an illegal alien was arrested for murder, released to the streets rather than honoring an ICE detainer in his very own state. What concerns me is Van Halen never went to the border the last 4 years on Joe Biden when he had a 600% increase in sex trafficking in women and children. You have a record number of no-inspected terrorists crossing that border. You had 250,000 Americans die from fentanyl overdose because of the open border. You got over 4,000 illegal aliens died making that journey, which is an historic record. What shocks me is he's remained silent on the travesty that happened on our southern border. Many people died. Thousands of people died. I've met with hundreds of angel moms and dads who buried their children that were murdered by an illegal alien. How many angel moms and dads has he met in the state of Maryland? That's what concerns me.
Yeah, I think he's making a very good point. Where are your priorities, Van Hollen? Caroline Leavitt, who is turning out to be a tremendous press secretary, said that there was a litany of evidence proving Garcia's ties to the gang had been confirmed by 2 different courts and by multiple law enforcement officers. This is who the Democrat Party is advocating for, she said. It is ridiculous, and it is. And it doesn't make any sense. Why in the world would you make that the hill you want to die on? Why would you make this with the issue that you wanted, to draw attention to? Because you're on the wrong side of the issue and the wrong side of where America is. I don't think much is going to come out of this Supreme Court pause, by the way. I think it's just a matter of, getting you time to get some paperwork filed. And once the paperwork is filed, I think the high courts will, as they have in the past, support the president's ability to conduct foreign policy. And part of foreign policy is deciding, what you're going to do with regard to immigration. He has the right, as president of the United States, to issue directives within the boundaries of the law. And as far as I can tell, it's all been within the boundaries of the law. It's just that the Democrats don't like what has happened. It's simply that they liked what was happening during Biden when they were ignoring the law, not enforcing the law. I got to tell you, what a mess. What a mess this is. As far as this, what is his name? Abrego Garcia fella. He was stopped here in Tennessee in 2022. And there are some real questions about that. Real questions about that stop. So he's on his way. I guess he's going to Maryland from Texas, driving through on I-40. He stopped between Nashville and Knoxville, pulled over, driving an SUV, says the SUV belongs to his boss. I don't know. That would have been pretty easy to check the ownership of that vehicle, it would seem. And there were 8 people in the car. None of them had suitcases. To the trooper, it was a case of public, maybe human trafficking, a case of human trafficking. And so he looked, it had real suspicions about that. And yet when they reached out to the FBI said, take pictures, let him go. I don't know why this case was not prosecuted on a state level. We have state human trafficking laws that certainly would have applied. The guy was driving without a driver's license, a valid driver's license. His temporary license from Maryland was expired. He didn't have good answers. He's not a U.S. citizen. And yet, the Tennessee Highway Patrol decided to let him go. Yeah, okay, y'all have a nice day. No ticket. Nothing. Now, I've talked to law enforcement officers in this area. I say, look, you run across a situation like this. A guy doesn't have a valid driver's license. He's not a U.S. citizen. He pops up as potential MS-13. You got 8 people in the SUV with him. None of them have luggage. And when they asked each of them their addresses, they all responded in the same way and said, well, they put down the address for that Abrego Garcia had put down. They didn't have an address. Who were these people? Why was there no luggage? Was this a case of human trafficking? I don't know. It certainly was worth investigating, it would seem to me. I am baffled as to why the Tennessee Highway Patrol let these people go. Maybe there's a good explanation, and I'm happy to hear it, but I haven't heard it, and they've been asked about it time and time again. At first, they said it didn't happen. And then it looks like it did happen. Oh, look, yes, we have pictures. I don't know why that this was allowed to go down the way it went down, but virtually every law enforcement officer that I have talked to on a private basis, when I lay out the basics of the fact, they said at the very least, the driver should have gone to jail. Didn't happen. And I think inquiring minds want to know why not. Why did that not happen? And why was this even something that should have been run past the FBI? I don't understand that at all. Why is the FBI being consulted? And when the FBI tells you to let a criminal go, you just say, okay. There's something, whenever I hear a story and the story doesn't make any sense, when the story doesn't come together, I don't understand it. There's no logic to this. Why did this happen? There generally is a missing element. Information that I don't know. And when that information becomes clear, maybe all the pieces come together. But so far, I'm having a hard time understanding why this guy was let go. He should have been brought into custody. I think you could make a good case that they all should have been brought in and let it be sorted out by immigration officials and others. But one way or the other, you had legitimate reason to detain the driver. The driver didn't have a valid driver's license. You had a good reason to stop and investigate this further. I don't know, was it just a case of the trooper didn't want to get involved in something that was going to be a lot of paperwork? Doesn't seem like that would be the right answer, but maybe that was it. Oh, good. Well, the FBI told me to let him go. Good. I didn't want to deal with this anyway. I don't know what happened. I really don't know. Would love to talk to the trooper. That person who did that is unknown to us. Would love to get more information from the State Patrol, but they don't seem to be providing any information. Would love to know why TBI was not brought in, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, because this is a violation of state law as well as a potential violation of federal law. One way or the other, they should not have been let go. One other note, unrelated. Did you see this story about Kristi Noem? Now, Kristi Noem has been out there. She's been, I think, a very good representative of the Department of Homeland Security. She's going out there. She's hands-on. She's involved. But she decides to take the weekend off and go and have dinner with her family in Washington, D.C. Family comes in. She takes everybody out to dinner. Because she knows it's going to be a lot of money, she goes to the bank, gets some cash. She has $3,000 in her purse, along with her passport, her makeup bag, her DHS access card, her apartment key, and other personal items as one might put in one's purse. I don't know. I don't carry a purse, but I'm sure that all those things are within boundaries and other things as well. A man wearing a mask walked by the secretary's table and snatched the purse, walked away. And then ABC News says the Secret Service is investigating. Do you think? Where was the security team for Kristi Noem? It's not easy being a member of the Trump cabinet. Ask Kristi Noem. Ask Pete Hegseth. 30 minutes past the hour, time for the news.
.2:30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got the full forecast coming up in 5 minutes. Masses and services around the world after the death of Pope Francis, including a rosary service in St. Peter's Square in Rome. The Vatican releasing Pope Francis' death certificate, which includes the cause. Here's ABC News medical contributor Dr. Darian Sutton.
So we understand so far that he suffered a cerebral stroke that resulted in a coma as well as cardiovascular collapse. And so those can often be complications of long, complicated hospital courses. The stroke, of course, affecting the brain, cardiovascular collapse affecting the heart and the circulation system.
President Trump is expected to attend the funeral later this week. Stocks have been falling as President Trump ratchets up pressure on Fed Chair Jerome Powell to lower interest rates, posting to Truth Social Powell is a, quote, major loser And his administration's looking into whether Powell can be fired before his term is up because he won't lower interest rates. This is the president earlier today at the White House Easter egg event.
I think we're doing really well. We're all set. There's a little transition, and that's going to happen. But ultimately, we're going to be the strongest that we've ever been as a nation.
Meta making some changes aimed at cracking down on young people who lie about their age on Facebook and Instagram.
Meta is now testing artificial intelligence that automatically enrolls users who are suspected of lying about their age into teen accounts, a more restrictive form of account on Facebook and Instagram. Users generally interact with people of their own age, so Meta says it's using AI technology that will specifically examine who an account is friending or messaging on the platforms. Because AI is imperfect, Meta also says it's giving people the option to change their settings in case we make a mistake. Mike Dabusky, ABC News.
Yeah, Meta rolled out teen accounts last year. The accounts limit who can see and who can message a teenager's account on the platform. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
It's 37 minutes now, past the hour of 2 o'clock. We're heading up to the 3 o'clock hour when Matt Murphy will step in and take over the reins of this radio station and carry it all the way till 7 o'clock. 4 big hours of good, solid news, analysis, and information, and a chuckle or two. He's known to give you a chuckle or two. We'll check in with Matt in a few minutes to see what he has lined up on his program today. Look forward to that. Just going through and trying to clean up a little things that I think need reporting as the day progresses. White House denies report that the administration is looking for a replacement for Pete Hegseth. The NPR put out a story saying that this was happening, that they're looking for somebody to replace him, and this is what came out. From Caroline Levitt, the NPR story is total fake news based on one anonymous source who clearly has no idea what they're talking about. And the president said this morning he stands strongly behind SecDef Pete Hegseth. So this all has to do with, the latest kerfuffle has to do with a New York Times report that Hegseth shared details about the U.S. military operation in Yemen in a second previously unknown Signal group chat. Now, he responded to this pretty strongly, and let me see if I got it right here. I'm going to play that for you. Hegseth stopped at the Easter egg roll at the White House and asked about this, had this to say.
See, this is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputations. Not going to work with me, because we're changing the Defense Department, putting the Pentagon back in the hands of warfighters, and anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter. So I'm happy to be here at the Easter egg roll with my dad and my kids, because, this is what we're doing it for. These kids right here. This is why we're fighting the fake news media. This is why we're fighting slash and burn Democrats. This is why we're fighting hoaxsters. This group, this group right here, full of hoaxsters that peddle anonymous sources from leakers with access to grind, and then you put it all together as if it's some news story. And when we know it, we know exactly what it is. So I'm really proud of what we're doing for the president, fighting hard across the board, and I'm going to go roll some Easter eggs with my kids.
Yeah, that's what you do at the Easter egg roll. You roll the Easter eggs. You roll them with a spoon, I think it is. Fun event. But he's there with his dad. He's there with his family. He's got his kids there, and they're asking this question, and it's based on nothing, and he says it's a hoax. He called them hoaxsters. Caroline Levitt says he has the president's complete, absolute support as he continues to try to transform. Again, when you start transforming things and making big changes that needed to be made, institutional huge change is not easy to effect. And you're coming in and you're rattling cages, and the people don't like to have their cages rattled, and it's not the way we've always done it, and there's a lot of pushback, and believe me, the long knives are out for a lot of people in the Trump administration, because there are a lot of people. The deep state is there, the deep state is real, and the deep state is doing everything they can to try to damage these people who are coming in and affecting such effective change. They're affecting change effectively. Donald Trump is not happy with the chairman of the Fed. Let me get the latest numbers here. The markets did not look real good today. Again, they're in the red. Let me see. I'll pull them up right now so you'll know. Down 1,000 points. S&P down 144. That's about 2 3/4. NASDAQ down almost 3% right now at down 480. And, there's real concern here about what's happening with the market. And Trump thinks that interest rates need to be lower, and he's not happy with Jerome Powell. So here's from CNBC.com. Donald Trump on Monday ratcheted up his pressure campaign on Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, calling him a major loser and warning that the U.S. economy could slow down unless interest rates are lowered immediately. Preemptive cuts in interest rates are being called for by many, Trump wrote on Truth Social. He claimed that there is currently virtually no inflation in the U.S. and that the cost for energy and most other things are on the decline. That's what's not being reported. The cost for energy is going down. It will go down more. Year to year, I think last Easter, gas cost you 51 cents more a gallon. So it is going down. And there's nothing that helps the economy. So, I mean, yeah, okay. Tariffs cause the markets to tank, and everybody's worried about their 401k. But really what they're most concerned about should be whether or not we have inflation. No indication that inflation is going up because we're cutting government, we're making energy cheaper in America, and there's nothing that helps the economy than cheap energy costs, because that resonates through every single level of the economy. So if you get cheaper gas, that's a benefit. There are offsetting things here that are happening that will keep inflation at bay. I don't understand why people are having such a hard time with this whole concept. Yeah, we're doing hard things. Yeah, we're trying to change things and bring some sanity back to the whole tariff process, which should have been done. We're going to bring in billions and billions and billions of dollars through that. When you start to look at all these things, yeah, sure, it's possible we could face inflation, but I think there are a lot of countermeasures and things that are going on with the Trump administration that will actually go against inflation and make inflation stay at a reasonable level, which would be about 2%. With the cost trending so nicely downward, just what I predicted they would do. There could be almost no inflation. There could be a slowing of the economy unless Mr. Too Late, a major loser, lowers interest rates now. He wants Powell to lower the interest rates. And it seems to me that it has gotten political. He lowered the interest rates for Biden just before the election, right? But when Trump gets into office, well, we can't do that anymore. So Trump going after Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Fed, in a pretty big way. And I love this story. We'll probably get into this a little later next time I'm on. Dr. Anthony Fauci, according to New York Post, his fortune doubled, hitting about $15 million between 2019 and the end of 23 over the course of the pandemic, including during the worst of the draconian COVID lockdowns. Fauci's net worth was $7.6 million in January of 2019 before COVID-19 and surged to about $15 million by the end of 23. 141 pages of financial disclosure forms obtained by the watchdog group Open the Books has revealed. 45 minutes past the hour. Coming up in just a moment, we'll check in with Matt Murphy to see what's on tap for his show today. It's all straight ahead right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's 50 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Brian Wilson in for Chad Benson. He'll return tomorrow in his regular time slot. Coming up here in just a few minutes, we'll be handing it over to Matt Murphy and the Matt Murphy Show. Big program going up every day. Every day it's a big program. I'm listening a lot these days, Matt. I think you got that show dialed in really good.
Well, you're very kind, Brian. I'm simply attempting to keep the fires burning that you lit so many years ago on the drive with Brian Wilson. How's it going, my friend?
It's going well. Haven't talked to you in a while. Everything going well?
We're doing great. I saw some photographs of the big Easter egg hunt out in Watertown. I don't know if you had a chance to talk about that today, but that looked like big fun.
It was big fun. We had a bunch of people that showed up, and we had promised that there would be 10,000 eggs. And, I thought, wow, 10,000 eggs, that's a lot of eggs. You know how many eggs we put out there?
How many?
15,000 eggs.
Well, they did. I'm not one to criticize. Not me, Brian. Not me. But some of those eggs did not look very well hidden. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
There was no challenge at all. It's just basically, the kids running in there and just filling. I mean, some of these kids are just like, they're coming out with their Easter egg baskets filled, plastic sacks filled. I see dads who've got them up in their T-shirts, wrapped up in their T-shirts, and they're walking away. I mean, they cleaned up. There were so many eggs, and the cutest Easter bunny ever.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I hear. Everybody was talking about the Easter bunny. Very, very. I mean, the height of that Easter bunny looks very suspicious, Brian. That's all I'll say.
All I'll say is the Easter bunny was so cute, I took her home.
That's pretty good.
But it was great fun. When I took on this thing at the Chamber of Commerce in Watertown, I just want to help the community grow in an effective way. But we do a lot of events during the year, and it's a bunch of work and a bunch of fun. But I'll tell you, the churches really came together.
Oh, yeah.
In Watertown to help out on this one. It was a really good event, and thanks for asking about it.
Well, I mean, no, it's absolutely fabulous. And, I wanted to ask you this. Have you ever been to, and I heard you mention the White House event. Did you cover the White House event?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I covered it. My memory is I went once. I took a day off so I could take my daughter. Now, she was probably just short of 2 when we took her.
Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, maybe a year and a half, something like that. And we took her, so it was a little bit, it was over her head. But I said, I'm going to take my daughter to the Easter egg roll. And I got tickets and went. And it's quite a nice event. And hundreds, thousands of people on the lawn. They do an Easter egg roll, and she was a little too young for that. But we got some Easter eggs that she could keep. And some of them are wooden. And some of them have engraving on them that have the White House engraved on them. So it's really nice. Nice event, always a nice event. And years past, the Easter Bunny has been like a celebrity.
Uh-huh.
I think it was like, for many years, it was, what's the guy's name that used to do the weather on the Today Show? Willard Scott.
Willard Scott, not Al
Willard
Roker.
Scott used to be he used to be the Easter Bunny for many, many years. But
wasn't Willard Scott originally the Ronald McDonald?
That's true.
I think that's a true story.
So putting on a uniform, that's not unusual for him.
What is the? Here's my question though. What is the Easter egg roll? Like, I've heard this for years. Is it it's like a competition?
It's a competition. They got lanes cut, marked off in the lawn.
Uh-huh.
And you get an egg and a spoon, and you have to roll it with the spoon all the way down to the other side.
Without breaking it, I guess.
Without breaking it, or they may be wooden eggs. I don't recall. But yeah, the idea is just to win the race. Just pushing the egg along with a spoon. That's an Easter egg roll.
I would love to see Joe Biden competing in the Easter egg roll.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it, last year or year before? He didn't know. The Easter Bunny had to help him out, telling him where to go.
Had to pat him on the shoulder. Come this way, boss. Yeah.
Well,
who's in charge? The President of the United States or the Easter Bunny?
It's startling. It scared the heck out of him. Whoa. There's a big, tall bunny. He probably thought it was Harvey.
Thought it was real.
And can I tell you this other story? It's not a funny story. It's just this thing that's been happening to me, and I finally figured it out. I talked about it a little earlier, but I've been getting these threatening phone calls And I think I mentioned to you, are you getting any calls? And you said, no, I'm not getting any calls. I asked Dan Mandis, I asked Chris Hand, I asked Chad, anybody getting into these calls? And they were threatening calls, and they were aimed at, me personally. Hey, we know where you live. We have your address. Hope everything works out for you, Brian. And they were creepy.
They were freaky. They were so freaky.
Yeah, I think I played one.
You
for
did.
You, didn't
you did.
Yeah. So I mean, they're really creepy, and a little threatening, and a little scary. So we got the cops to start patrolling our house a little more closely. I got some extra cameras, and we made sure that all of our weaponry was easily attainable. So we did all that. Still couldn't figure it out. It would pause, and then I'd get 2 or 3 more. Then I'd pause, and I'd get 2 or 3 more. Finally have figured out what it was about. What? Some of the messages refer to Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I couldn't understand why people were tying me to Marjorie Taylor Greene, because they were angry at her and for some reason angry at me, and they seemed to suggest that we were somehow connected. I couldn't put it all together. It all came together. Marjorie Greene has a boyfriend whose name is Brian Glenn.
What?
She has a boyfriend whose name is Brian Glenn. My full name is Brian Glenn Wilson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he's a conservative broadcaster as well. And I mean, I think people confused and thought that I was dating Marjorie Taylor Greene. When anybody who knows me knows I'm married, first of all. Number 2, I've never even been in a room with Marjorie Taylor Greene, to my knowledge. I've never met her.
Well, and why would Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend live in, Watertown's beautiful, but Watertown, Tennessee?
Yeah, of all places. It didn't make any sense at all. So anyway, that's what it was all about. They had confused me with her, and they were trying, they shouldn't have been abusing her either, or this guy, Brian Glenn, who I don't know. But I mean, they should never have been doing that. But nonetheless, I now understand why some of this was backfiring on me, and it didn't make any sense at all.
Well, liberals, much like criminals, Brian,
not very smart.
As scary and as dangerous as they can be, they're so dumb oftentimes.
So what are the chances that there are 2 conservative broadcasters? One of them is named Brian Glenn, and the other one is named Brian Glenn Wilson.
No, that's true. And well, I mean, I guess that is in some ways a relief. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's a relief. At least you figured it out, and you know that it's just a case of mistaken identity or whatnot.
Yeah.
It's still scary.
It's still scary, and it's still a shame that she's being harassed and that he's being harassed. Apparently, everybody that is a Republican, I mean, their task is behind the scenes to just sort of be ugly. Like, I mean, Kristi Noem in a restaurant having a meal, and a masked person steals her purse.
I have questions, and we're going to pose them on the show today. I have so many questions. I mean, one, do we believe that the perpetrator knew that it was Kristi Noem or not? My gut tells me no, but I don't know how you wouldn't know that with the amount of Secret Service. Where was her protection?
Where was the Secret Service, and where was her protection? Right.
And then, just as an aside, and I don't mind it. I mean, to each their own. I mean, it's a free country, and you can do what you want to do, but I don't think it's a good idea walking around Washington, D.C. with $3,000 in cash. That's just me.
No. But if you got a security detail, you think you're pretty safe, right?
Well, I would guess so, sure.
So you're in the restaurant, and a man wearing a mask walks by, and the Secret Service or her security detail did not respond. Something's not quite right about that.
Just weird.
Yeah,
it's a weird story. We'll cover that today, obviously. We're going to cover, Pope Francis passing away. All folks are talking about that. We'll continue to update Garcia, as I'm sure that you were doing so, Brian, during the Chad Benson show. So we'll keep it going at 3 o'clock, my friend.
All right. It's all straight ahead coming up here on Super Talk 99.7. I'm Brian Wilson. Chad Benson back tomorrow. Have a nice day, everybody.